My husband wants me to end my friendship with my guy friend. I can't believe this Trevor and I had a love story straight out of a romance novel. We met at a mutual friend's party, and from the moment we locked eyes, it was like the universe had aligned. He was charming, attentive, and everything I had ever wanted in a partner. When he proposed, there was no hesitation. We were deeply in love and excited to build a beautiful life together. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. We were each other's best friends, tackling life's ups and downs together. But as the saying goes, not all that glitters is gold. Slowly, cracks began to form beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect relationship. Trevor and I had friends from college, and among them were Dan and his wife, Christy. Dan and I had been close during our university days. He was my confidant, my study buddy, and if I'm being completely honest, my crush. I never acted on those feelings, though. It was just a harmless infatuation that fizzled out over time. Dan met Christy a year after we graduated, and their relationship flourished. Trevor and I attended their wedding, celebrating their happiness without a trace of jealousy or regret. For years, we all moved on with our lives, reconnecting only occasionally for casual meetups or holiday messages. But everything changed one fateful evening about a year ago. It began with Trevor acting different. He was coming home late from work, taking phone calls in hushed tones, and creating this growing distance between us. At first, I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself that it was just stress or work-related pressure. But the nagging feeling in my gut told me otherwise. Finally, I mustered the courage to confront him. "Trevor, is something going on?" I asked one night as he sat scrolling through his phone. He looked up, his face unreadable. "What do you mean? You've been so distant lately," I said, my voice trembling. "Coming home late, taking calls in private. It's like you're hiding something." Instead of reassuring me, Trevor's face hardened. "Are you serious right now? You're overreacting," he snapped, brushing past me. Frustrated and hurt, I demanded to see his phone. That's when he exploded, accusing me of not trusting him and being paranoid. Our argument spiraled out of control, and in a fit of anger, I stormed out of the house. I ended up at a bar, nursing a drink and trying to process the chaos. That's when fate, or perhaps misfortune, intervened. Dan was there. We hadn't seen each other in years, but he looked just as I remembered. His easy smile and warm demeanor instantly put me at ease. "Hey," he said, sliding onto the bar stool next to me. "Are you okay?" I don't know why, but his simple question opened the floodgates. I found myself venting about Trevor, the fight, and how lost I felt. Dan listened intently, offering kind words and light-hearted jokes to lift my spirits. The more we talked, the more I felt that the weight on my chest begin to lift. Fueled by alcohol and vulnerability, I made a confession I hadn't planned. "You know," I said, laughing nervously, "I used to have the biggest crush on you in college." Dan's eyes widened, and for a moment, I regretted my words. But then he chuckled, his cheeks slightly flushed. "Funny you should say that," he admitted. "I had a thing for you too." His confession took me by surprise, and before I knew it, we were reminiscing about our college days, the missed opportunities, and the what-ifs. One thing led to another, and in a moment of weakness, we kissed. It wasn't just a kiss. It was the kind of kiss that makes you forget the world around you. Passionate, forbidden, and intoxicating. Before I knew it, we were in his car, crossing lines that should never have been crossed. For a brief, fleeting moment, it felt like a dream, a fantasy come to life. But reality hit hard the next morning. Waking up, the guilt was unbearable. What had I done? I had betrayed Trevor, my husband, and Christy, a woman who had never been anything but kind to me. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment, and vowed to forget it ever happened. But Dan had other plans. He began texting and calling, insisting that we explore the connection we had rediscovered. I resisted at first, trying to salvage what little dignity I had left. But Dan was persistent, and his charm was hard to ignore. Slowly, my resolve crumbled. We started meeting in secret, finding secluded places where we wouldn't be caught. Each time, I told myself it would be the last, but the pull was too strong. Meanwhile, Trevor and I drifted further apart. The love and intimacy that had once defined our marriage were replaced by guilt, suspicion, and mistrust. I began to suspect that he might be seeing someone else. But how could I confront him when I was no better? Then came the day that changed everything. Trevor announced he had a work trip and would be gone for a few days. Seizing the opportunity, I invited Dan to my house. To ensure privacy, I disabled the security cameras. It was risky, but I was too blinded by the thrill to care. On his second visit, we were in the guest room when the door suddenly opened. Trevor stood there, his face a mix of shock and fury. My heart dropped. He wasn't supposed to be home for another day. Dan left in a hurry, avoiding eye contact with Trevor. But the damage was done. Trevor stormed out of the house, unreachable by phone or through his friends. When he finally returned that night, the tension was unbearable. "You've ruined everything," he said, his voice trembling with anger and pain. I tried to apologize, to explain, but every word I said only seemed to make things worse. "Get out," he said coldly. "Pack your things and leave by morning." I begged him to reconsider, promising it would never happen again. But Trevor's mind was made up. He was done. That night, as I sat alone in the living room, the weight of my actions hit me like a freight train. I had destroyed my marriage, betrayed my best friend, and shattered the lives of people I cared about. Now, as I look back, I'm haunted by the choices I made. I wonder if there's any way to pick up the pieces, or if this is the price I must pay for my betrayal. Regret is a heavy burden to bear, and the road ahead feels uncertain. But one thing is clear. The life I once knew is gone, and I have no one to blame but myself. I destroyed my beautiful marriage over a meaningless affair. At the time, I convinced myself that one mistake couldn't erase years of love, trust, and commitment. But I was wrong, so very wrong. It all began innocently enough, or so I told myself. A few flirtatious texts, a lingering gaze, and a shared moment of vulnerability spiraled into a decision I can never take back. My husband, Trevor, was everything a woman could ask for: kind, hardworking, and fiercely loyal. Yet, in a moment of weakness, I betrayed him with someone who didn't mean a fraction of what he did to me. And it shattered not only my marriage, but my entire life. That fateful night, Trevor found out. I don't know how, maybe it was intuition, or maybe he'd seen something I failed to hide. His face, etched with heartbreak, is something I'll never forget. His voice trembled as he asked, "How could you do this to me, to us?" For a brief moment, I thought I could fix it. I tried to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but Trevor wasn't having it. "You should have talked to me before going to bed with another man," he said, his voice raw with pain and fury. His words were like daggers, cutting through every excuse I had prepared. That night, I decided not to leave the house. I thought time would cool his anger, that we could talk things through in the morning. But when Trevor saw me downstairs, his fury only intensified. His disgust was palpable as he packed up my belongings and threw them out onto the lawn. His final words before slamming the door still echo in my mind. "I never want to see you again." Humiliated and heartbroken, I had no choice but to leave. I moved in with my sister Emily, who, while disappointed in me, still opened her home. She didn't sugarcoat her feelings. She made it clear I'd made a colossal mistake. "Trevor loved you," she said. "Why risk that for someone like Dan?" I had no answer. At the time, I wasn't even sure why I did it. For weeks, I tried to contact Trevor. I sent texts, emails, and even left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. But he ignored every single attempt. The silence was unbearable, and the regret? It consumed me. I replayed our happiest moments in my mind at our wedding, the lazy Sundays spent cooking together, the laughter we shared over inside jokes. All of it felt like another lifetime. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, a man claiming to be from a bank showed up at my sister's doorstep. He handed me an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a notice for a $50,000 debt money I had supposedly borrowed. I was in shock. How could this be possible? I hadn't taken out any loans, and my aitas were still at the house with Trevor. It didn't make sense. Desperate for answers, I went to see Trevor. I wasn't sure if he would even open the door, but I had no choice. When he finally did, the cold, calculating smile on his face sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, you got the notice?" he asked, his tone dripping with mock concern. That's when he revealed everything. Trevor had partnered with cybercriminals to open a fraudulent account in my name. He had accessed my personal information and orchestrated this entire scheme as payback for my betrayal. But he didn't stop there. He'd also drained my personal savings account, leaving me completely broke. "Revenge," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You took everything from me, our trust, our future, so I took everything from you." I was devastated. My entire world had crumbled. Dan, the man I had the affair with, offered no support. In fact, he ghosted me, choosing to reconcile with his wife and pretend our affair had never happened. Alone, penniless, and drowning in debt, I hit rock bottom. Trevor didn't stop with financial ruin. He served me divorce papers, ensuring that I wouldn't get a dime from him. I couldn't afford a lawyer or fight for alimony, so I signed the papers without resistance. The man who once promised to love me in sickness and in health now looked at me as if I were a stranger. I stayed with Emily, trying to piece together what was left of my life. I found a part-time job and began working tirelessly to pay off the debt Trevor had saddled me with. But it felt like an uphill battle, and every day was a reminder of the life I had destroyed. Through it all, I've had plenty of time to reflect. I don't blame Trevor for what he did. His love for me was genuine, as was his pain. I can't even say I didn't deserve his revenge. What I did to him was cruel and selfish, and he responded with the same intensity. But regret is a heavy burden to carry, especially when you know you can never make things right. There are moments when I wonder what might have happened if I had been honest with Trevor about my feelings instead of seeking comfort elsewhere. Could we have worked through our issues? Could we have saved our marriage? These questions haunt me every day, but they're questions I'll never have answers to. As for Trevor, I hope he finds peace. I hope he finds someone who will love him the way he deserves. And I hope he can forgive me someday, not for my sake, but for his own healing. For those reading my story, take it as a cautionary tale. Don't let fleeting moments of weakness destroy the things that truly matter. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. And love, no matter how strong, cannot survive without respect and honesty. If you've ever faced a similar situation, whether on the giving or receiving end, know that you're not alone. Mistakes are a part of life, but how we deal with their consequences defines who we are. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have any advice, thoughts, or words of wisdom, please share them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.